All right. Hi, everybody. This is Cindy Ingram from the Art Curator for Kids. And my daughter is standing here. She wants to say hello, too.
Hello.
Oh, we can't see you. There you are.
Hello.
Okay. See you later.
Bye-bye.
All right. We are here, and today we are going to talk about teaching non-Western art. So everything that has to do with that. And it was kind of sparked from a comment that I got on my most recent blog post about Australian Aboriginal people. And so I thought we would kind of go over a lot of the thoughts that I have about this, and I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback as well as you watch. So whenever you do arrive, go ahead and say hello. And so I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about my history when it comes to non-Western art because, oh, and you know what? I'm going to start with this little thing on the screen. Oh, other way. Right there. I got this new software and I can put pictures on it. It's pretty cool, although it's switched from what I think it's going to be. I had this topic planned, and then I realized I also had planned this summer a series in July, Art Around the World in 21 Days. So I threw together my opt-in page really quickly so that you can sign up if you're interested. So in July, I'm going to do sort of like an artwork a day from a different country. And if you remember, if you've been a long-time follower of my website, I started that, I did that in November of 2014. And it was one of the first sort of big things I did on the website was Art Around the World in 30 days. So this time I'm doing Art Around the World in 21 days, and it is going to be email. So if you're interested in that, go to artcuratorforkids.com/21 days, and I will type that into the chat so that you can see it. I need to refresh the page and find myself so that you can see that. All right. Well, it takes its time. I'll continue to talk. So anyway, please sign up for that. It'll be a good time. And again, it won't start till July. So the thoughts that I have about non-Western art is I used to be very afraid of non-Western art. And I recently wrote a blog post about Australian Aboriginal people and their art and a project I did in my classroom. And I really, throughout my career, up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was really scared to do anything related to the art of other cultures, mainly because I didn't feel that I had the knowledge or information really to do that justice. And I didn't want to offend anybody. I didn't want to get the information wrong. And especially because a lot of our knowledge on the past and on other cultures changes so frequently. And I was just really worried about, my lack of knowledge, the sensitive aspects of learning about another culture and that sort of thing, that I often avoided it. I mean, the museums I taught at an museum of American art, so we didn't really have, oh good, I finally found myself, so I can put the link in there. Sorry, it took me a second. Okay. Oh, I guess I had it in the description. I didn't know that. I forgot. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so in the museums I worked at, we didn't, it was an American art museum, didn't have a non-Western art collection because it was American. I also worked at another one that had a good non-Western art collection, but it wasn't a very full collection. It was just like, we had a few really good pieces from different continents, and so I got to know a little bit about the culture, but not a lot. And, as I have gotten more experienced, I realized that the Western-centric view of art history is doing our children a disservice. And so I think it's really important to include art from other cultures. And when I started my website a little over 3 years ago, I decided deliberately that I would include as much as possible art from other cultures, art from people of color, art from women, things like that, I didn't just stick to the famous artists. And even though those get me the most blog views, I probably would have more visitors to my website if I did posts about, all of those. But I chose early on that I was like, this is something that's needed, and this is something I'm going to do, and I'm going to teach myself as I go. And so through the past 3 years of this website, my anniversary was April 1st, so I'm 3 years and 1 month into the website. I have been teaching myself non-Western art because I didn't learn it in college. I had to take one non-Western art class, and I took Islamic book arts, which was really cool, and I don't remember a lot because it was, gosh, how long ago was it? Like over 15 years ago. And it just was not included in my survey classes. When I taught college, I barely included it. So anyway, it's just something I've really come to know that is necessary. And so it has been something I've been working on diligently over the last 3 years. And I've grown to love so many different artworks and artists and cultures that I didn't know about before. And I'm super excited to share those with you on my website because, gosh, there's so much art out there. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from. That I am by no means an expert on non-Western art, and I have been, teaching myself, and I don't think you can be because, gosh, it's overwhelming the amount of art there is in the world. So, and then it's a very sensitive subject. And so I recently got a blog comment, and my first 2 Facebook Lives have been kind of spurred by blog comments. Last one being the nudity question, which I often get, but I did get a comment on my recent Aboriginal post, and I want to share that with you and share my thoughts about it. And I would love to hear your feedback if you're here and you're listening. I also posted this in my Resource Library Facebook group and in the Art History and Art Appreciation Facebook group, but that one's not very active, so no one responded to it. But so let me find the comment. Oh, I'm on the wrong post. That's why I can't find it. Okay, so the post was, we studied Australian Aboriginal art, we learned about rock art, and we learned about contemporary art, and we learned about the Dreamtime religion. We watched some videos about that. We, talked about, a lot of elements of their life and their respect for nature and that sort of thing. And then we did a project where we drew animals and painted them, kind of similar style to the Australian Aboriginal people. Wait, which direction does that hair go? Okay, there you go. The camera's backwards, confusing me. And so I got this comment, and I thought it was interesting. Okay, so here it is. Hi, Cindy. Great to see you educating students about Australian Aboriginal art and encouraging others to learn about it. I'm just concerned about the cultural appropriation that you suggest at the end of students making Aboriginal art. If you understand the connection our First Nations people have with art and their culture, you would understand that this is generally considered offensive. Did you consult any Aboriginal elders in the making of the unit? Can I encourage you to find out before promoting this approach globally? So I got that comment, and it sparked a lot of thoughts in me. And so I thought, why don't I just ramble on Facebook about it for a while? So I'm starting from that point of, was my post offensive? Was my project offensive? Did I do a disservice to Aboriginal people by educating my students about them? By having them make artwork that is kind of similar in style to the Australian people? I would love to hear your thoughts if you have them into the comments below. And my response was, no, they're not making Aboriginal art. I never told my children that they are making Aboriginal art because they are not Aboriginal people. So that was my first remark was, well, no, they're not making Aboriginal art. They are being inspired by it, and they are learning about it, and they are applying what they learned through art making. I gave them a lot of creative choice. I didn't require them to do dots. I didn't require them to put symbols and stuff in there. I did only allow them to use like red, orange, and yellow at the first step of the project. Mainly they had to draw an animal, and then they had to use different media on top of it. So it's interesting because I'm an American, so I'm thinking, about Native American people. And when I taught about Native American art in my ancient art course, I had a video where I said, this is a really sensitive subject, and the scholarship is changing regularly. People are still living. They're still out there. They're still making art. They are still, it's not like these are dead cultures. These are still living, breathing cultures. And so in my video for my course, I talked about how scary that is as an educator, especially an educator who is writing about this stuff online. Like, what is worse? Maybe accidentally offending somebody through something I write, or more people getting inspired and encouraged by the art and learning about their culture and learning about their art. So it's sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Like, I personally had decided that I was going to take the risk that I probably will get negative feedback somehow on these sorts of posts because they're so charged emotionally, but that I have to push through and do it anyway because it's just something that we need to know. And if I'm coming from a place of authenticity and trying to approach these subjects in a respectful way, then I'm doing the best I can. And then that these sort of comments that kind of have to roll off my back. But yeah, especially when it comes to indigenous cultures, because they were destroyed by white people, and so that, a white person coming to talk about their art could be troublesome. And so it's just something I've just decided I'm just going to have to do because I think I can't leave that stuff out, So whether or not the actual project is cultural appropriation, that's a whole other thing we'll get into in just a minute too. So I have another example that popped up in the art teachers Facebook group, which was interesting conversation as well. So let me connect with my notes here to make sure that I am staying on track. So yeah, and me not being a part of the group that I'm teaching about is something that I have to be sensitive to. And that goes with any work of art. When I talk about Black artists, when I talk about Middle Eastern artists and stuff like that, I am not a member of those groups, and so I have to be sensitive to that. But I still need to include their art. I can't, it's a whole thing. Things I think about when I'm posting things. Okay. So, but I think it's important that we do it because I think that non-Western cultures and teaching non-Western art exposes our children to the world. And so many of our students, especially, when you teach in a school like mine where most of the students are economically disadvantaged, most of the students have never, left this area, and some of them have left the state. Many of them have never even gone beyond the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is where I live. And not even the Fort Worth area, just the Dallas area. So I think it's important that we show them what else is out there in the world and who's out there, and that there are people just like them. And so I think giving them a bigger global worldview is very important, and that we don't, through our curriculum, inadvertently teach our children that the Western-centric point of view, that the Western civilization is the best one, and that this is the normal, this is the right, this is the good, and then everybody else is primitive, everybody else is third world, everyone else is other. So that is my viewpoint on that I think we need to expand their worldview. And I've gotten into debates with faculty members at my campus who are like, no, they need to understand their own history before you expose them to other histories. And I just disagree. I think we can make room in their brain for all sorts of information, and that they don't need to know everything about their own history before they can learn about the rest. And because America is a melting pot of all sorts of places that, I don't know, not everyone watching now is from America, but where I'm at, we're a melting pot. Okay. Or, no, not melting pot. What is it? Salad? Mixed salad? Chopped salad? I forgot the right way to say it. Okay. See, you get terminology. It'll always get you. Someone will get upset if you say something wrong. Okay. So I really want to avoid the us versus them thing, that, we're better, and that we need to create that sort of sense of understanding. Okay, so one thing that I have found beneficial in talking about art from other cultures is to start out a unit on art from other cultures with discussions about examples of sort of the wrong way to look at other art from other cultures. And I've written a blog post about this, and I will copy the link, but I'm going to kind of share with you some of the examples too right now. But if you're interested in kind of reading further, and it kind of goes into a full lesson plan as well. I thought I had it open. Oh, there it is. Okay. I got two monitors going. So making sure they are working. There we go. Okay. So one example is Mark Twain. Okay, so Mark Twain, you may know, was also a travel writer. In addition to writing his novels, he also sort of traveled the world, and he wrote novels about travel as well. And one example is that he visited India, and he looked at the art there. And I'm going to show you an example of the art there, because I got this cool new software, and I can just pop images up on the screen like that. I'm going to scoot over here. Hi, welcome. So what Mark Twain said, oh wait, I got to get rid of that other thing. Okay. So this is Shiva Nataraja, Hindu sculpture of Shiva, who's the creator and destroyer of the universe. And what Mark Twain said about the art, about Hindu art, is he said that it is crude, misshapen, and ugly. He also said they flocked through one's dreams at night, a wild mob of nightmares. And that is troublesome, to say the least, that he would say that, and I hear stuff like that from my students. They'll look at something and they'll say, oh, that's weird, or oh, that's ugly, and the people who made that object find it beautiful and find it really meaningful, especially with, look at this. He wasn't talking specifically about this one work of art, but he was talking about Hindu art as a whole. But still, Hindu art as a whole kind of looks like that, or that, the opposite way. So, we have to be wary of calling things weird or bad or ugly or something, when the actual people who made it found great joy in this. He's the creator and destroyer. He's stomping that. I don't know if I can point to it. No, I can't. Apasmaru is the demon he's stomping on. He's and he's the symbol of ignorance, and he's stomping out ignorance, and he's refreshing the world, and it's a wonderful thing, and he's dancing, and it's joyous. And to call it crude and misshapen and the stuff of nightmares, that's just crazy talk. Okay, so I've got a comment, and I want to read it here. Megan says she has a very diverse student body, and she teaches a lesson on mola appliques in Panama. I'm thinking about doing that as my next unit, actually. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and connecting with the background of these children, because most of my students are Latino in some way, majority being Mexican, but we have a lot from Honduras, and we have Colombia, and different South American countries. And they love when I show them that type of art. And that was another argument that I made when I mentioned earlier, like letting them teach their culture before you teach them other cultures. I'm like, well, their culture isn't necessarily the West or like American culture. Their culture is Mexico, or wherever. So that's awesome. What a great moment, Megan. I love that. So another example is, okay, let me pop this one off the screen. And I'm going to put up another one. Where is it? Okay, so this is Apollo Belvedere. And on the left, a famous Greek sculptor, sorry, it's late, long day of talking. And then the one on the right is a African mask. And if you were at my recent aesthetics webinar, we talked about these two artworks in the webinar. But there was a guy named Kenneth Clark who wrote a book called Civilization from 1969. And he says, and I'm going to quote here, "I don't think there is any doubt that the Apollo embodies a higher state of civilization than the mask. They both represent spirits, messengers from another world, that is to say, from a world of our own imagining. To the Negro imagination, it is a world of fear and darkness, ready to inflict horrible punishment for the smallest infringement or taboo. To the Greek imagination, it is a world of light and confidence, in which the gods are like ourselves, only more beautiful, and descend to earth in order to teach men reason and the laws of harmony." So he basically, and actually it's not necessarily this mask, but he basically saw a mask like on the wall of his friend's house, an African mask, and he was like, got all his perspective on African masks from his friend's house mask on the wall, and then went and made all of these assumptions about it, that it's about fear and it's about darkness and it's about taboo. And when he had no knowledge of what that mask was used for, that African masks are used for celebrations most of the time, and it's not about this kind of darkness that he thought. And because his view was Western civilization is better. And the carver, the group that this mask on the screen is from, is the Baal people, and I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. That's another thing. Teaching Western artists, I don't know how to say these words. Okay, and it was, I have a quote from the carver who made the mask, and it says, "The god is a dance of rejoicing for me, so when I see the mask, my heart is filled with joy." Another carver says that the mask makes us happy when we see it. So that's not darkness and taboo and nightmares. It's light and happiness and dance and connection with life. Like, it's not, we cannot make assumptions based on just what we see. So, interesting tidbits, and you can show these two, artworks to your students and have that conversation and share that quote with them and be like, you know what? That when we make assumptions about another culture, and I'm doing art around the world with my students now, and we're doing Islamic art, and that one is just charged with stuff, as you can imagine, and I would get terrorist comments, and I would try to shut them down as much as I could, and I was like, you know what? Imagine if, and it happens, and especially with the demographics that I teach, that your racial group is being stereotyped for some reason. So say you're a black student, and a lot of people see you as a thug, and they see you as a criminal, and they see you as someone suspicious, Imagine how that makes you feel when you are not like that. And so I try to connect it to their experience and be like, you know what, when you say that we're looking at terrorist art, or why are we learning about this and stuff like that. Like, connect it to their experience and be like, you know what, this is why we're doing this, because there are so many misconceptions about other people around the world, and we need to educate ourselves, because the world can't survive if we don't educate ourselves on these things. Like, it just can't survive if we live in this bubble. I'm gonna go off on a rant there. Usually teaching Islamic art brings up all sorts of really interesting discussions. So that's another good one to do. I'm actually this week or next we'll have a blog post up about the project that we're doing, because they're just finishing up. So stay tuned on the website for that one. Okay, so if you're not on my email list, you can join it and get that sent to you by email. Okay, one more example. To take Apollo Belvedere and the mask off, and I'm going to add in, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this one. This is the Primitivism exhibit from the Museum of Modern Art. This was in the 80s or the early 90s. I don't remember exactly when. And so this is where I'm going to talk about the cultural appropriation thing. So if you're just joining me, I got a blog post or comment about how my Aboriginal lesson was cultural appropriation. And I don't necessarily disagree that, if I were a practicing artist and I made something that took imagery from Australian Aboriginal people and I put it in my art and I called it my own style, and then I put it in a gallery, which is what recently happened in an artist in the Pacific Northwest. Yes, cultural appropriation for sure. But then where do we draw the line between we're art teachers and we are educating our children about another culture? At what point is it cultural appropriation? At what point is it just education and being inspired? Because if we were to make an artwork based off of, in the style of Picasso, like maybe we do some sort of mixed up self-portrait thing, is that cultural appropriation? Are we still, So it's like, it's weird, and I don't really know the right answer at all. So I'm just sort of rambling about it. I don't know the answer. So anyway, this exhibit basically put works of early modern art next to artworks that either looked similar to them or they were directly inspired by, because we know that in the early 1900s, there was a new museum that opened in Paris, and it was an African art museum, and they had access to all these African artworks for the first time, and the artists were super inspired. If we look at, Picasso's Mademoiselle de, I can never say it right, Mademoiselle d'Avignon, my French is really bad, and we look at artworks like the ones on the book. Which way am I pointing? Yeah, that's so hard. Okay. We look at that and we see that they were inspired by them, but the problem was the MoMA didn't put any contextual information about the masks. It was like it used them as a prop to show the inspiration from the artworks, and they gave it a terrible exhibit title, Primitivism, that these cultures are primitive, and that these cultures, that it inherently says, okay, they are better, or we are better than them. And our artists are high artists, our artists are elite, and our artists are special, and that these other ones are primitive. And so that's a big problem. So I have another example just of some artwork from the exhibit. I couldn't find any. These are like scanned from the catalog. Okay, let's see. There's another one. I'm going to see if I can make that bigger. It's a Max Ernst sculpture and a mask from Upper Volta, which is one I have never heard about before in my life. Tussian Upper Volta. So much art I need to learn about. And you can see they're very similar, and they were inspired by that. So do we look at Max Ernst art and Picasso's art, and do we call that cultural appropriation? Or at what point can we just be inspired, and at what point is it stealing? And that's such a interesting fine line. And at what point, as art teachers, is that just education? So, I'm sorry for hearing a loud noise. My garage door is opening. T-ball game must be over. Okay. All right. Let me look at my notes. So those are just all my philosophical thoughts about it. And now I am going to share with you some how-tos. So some strategies for teaching non-Western art. So I'm going to get this off the screen so you don't have that anymore. Let's put that one back up. If you just joined us, or sometime since I last had this up, I'm doing an Art Around the World in 21 Days series in July. So you can sign up for it at artcuratorforkids.com/21days. I figured over the summer we'll probably not going to want to talk about teaching all that much, but we can definitely talk about art and be inspired by art. So strategies, and I'm open to suggestions. So throw in your comments into the chat if you have them, especially if you're watching this later. A lot of people watch Facebook Lives later, so feel free to add your comments to the chat, and we can come back to them and continue the discussion after this is over. But I think one, that we need to have sort of an authentic study, that we are understanding the meaning, and that we are not looking at their artwork as physical objects only, but that we are studying the form, or that we're studying the function and the meaning of the art. So it's not just what did it look like, but why was it important? Why did they value it? What did it mean to them? And how did they use it? Because often it wasn't just, like the word art is not necessarily something that's often around in other cultures. It's really more, art is more integrated into their lifestyle. And so coming from an authentic place and coming from a place of understanding. Also, don't judge, keep judgment away. So I know we want to critique, we want to do critiques and we want to do this and that, but that, we can't say somebody is weird or bad, or that their way of doing something is not okay, because that's not how we do it. So we need to be respectful of other cultures when we're in our teaching. So avoiding negative language about the cultures. And then, I already said that one. Oh my gosh. I made a whole list and I basically repeated myself 4 times on the list. So, yeah, what are you going to do? Okay. Let me just check my notes, see if there's anything else I wanted to say. I have already gone 30 minutes. That was my goal, to stay under 30 minutes. Oh, you know what? One more thing. And another strategy is when you are doing art projects, that you are not necessarily just making copies of their art, that you are, allowing for creative choice and also focusing on meaning as well. And that's probably what my problem was with the Australian one, is that it didn't pull in the meaning maybe as much, but maybe that would have also upset this person as well. I'm not sure. But for example, I did an African lesson, African sculpture, and I pulled different elements of the different sculptures we looked at for the project. So, an example was an Nkisi and Conde power figure, and inside they would put medicines and herbs and ancestral earth and things like that, and would sort of bring the spirit into the sculpture. And so I had the students talk about what brings your spirit, what your life into you. Like, if you were a sculpture, what would you put in the stomach to bring it life? So, it was connected to the meaning of the art, but it was also connected to the student, and that it wasn't trying to imitate or mimic it, but it was pulling out some of the meaning and rethinking it. So that's just one example. And then, so that's my spiel on there. Okay. And I'm just going to take another look one more time just to make sure I covered all my thoughts. If you have any questions or comments for me, go ahead and throw them into the chat there while I look at my notes awkwardly while you will watch me. Oh, another thing is I put the age of the student. So like, I teach middle school, and so I'm not necessarily teaching as if they're all going to be like professional artists one day. I just want to expose them to the different types of art and the ways of making art and to explore that. But if you're teaching like an upper level high school EP studio art class, you're going to have different discussions with them, and that you're not going to do these types of projects, and that you're going to have more personal responses. And one really good work of art, and I totally forgot that I was going to show you an example of that, and it is called, and I'm going to type it because I got to look up the title because it's really good. Something for you to look up. And then this is a good example, and oh no, 404. This artwork is really hard to find on the internet, and because I had it in a textbook that I used to teach from, and now it's like really impossible to find pictures of it on the internet. Okay, so it's John Fyodorov. I can never say his name right either. And it's called Animal Spirit Channeling Device for the Contemporary Shaman. And I'm going to screenshot it so you can see this. But it's, okay, excuse my really crazy background. Okay, this is just, but this is not even all of it. I don't know if you can see that. I gotta move this window somewhere else. Okay. There it is. Okay, well, get smaller. So it's, it's one of those pull toys, and then it has feathers and stuff over it. But this is not even the full thing. It's got like bells, and it's got this whole like thing at the top and thing at the bottom, and it's talking about culture. It's like an artwork about cultural appropriation almost, and how cultures have had to adapt to like life today, and notice how they wrote cat spirit, bird spirit. It's a really interesting artwork to explore, and I think it's in one of my blog posts, but I don't remember which one. I think it was in 5 artworks to intrigue high schoolers. I think it was in that one. So if you're interested, you can find that one, or I'll post it after this is over. I'll try to find it. But it's really interesting artwork to talk about, like, and this is the type of thing, like in your studio or in your high school classes, you can really talk about, how we can take stuff from this culture and think about the issues surrounding them, and then we can, how do I get back to my camera? There we go. And how we can use our art to start a conversation about it. And that's what John Fyodorov is doing. So it's interesting. Okay, so I'm going to read Megan's comment here. Why can't I see? I can't see some of it. Okay. The current standards in English and history for elementary are so focused on American history. Yes. And I feel more need for world context. Yeah. Yeah. My school, Europe too, but it's not enough. So I've been, throwing in other things too, because I'm like, you know what? I think core knowledge needs more multiculturalism, and so we are going to do that. Yeah, it's tricky, especially in the younger grades, for sure, because, yeah, I don't know. They get world history, what, like 2 times or something? Don't they? Like, they get 1 year of it in high school, and then they get, God, I can't remember the standards. I feel like there's a middle school year where they do more world stuff too, but it's still really Europe focused. But I'm confused because my school does something different, so I'm out of the loop on that. So, oh, the Revolutionary War. Well, the Revolutionary War is fascinating, but a whole year on it, that's a lot. That's a lot. Well, maybe, unless you're required to go along with the history curriculum, you can do your own thing as an art teacher, thankfully. But you've got Hamilton with the Revolutionary War. So I'm like, hey, Hamilton. Okay. All right. So that is all that I think of my thoughts. I didn't think I was going to be able to fill all this time, and I never actually talked about this before. So that was kind of fun, kind of hashing it all out. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out. And my email is cindy@artcuratorforkids.com. Don't hesitate to sign up for the series here, Art Around the World in 21 Days. It's going to be an email series in July where every day from July 2nd to July 22nd, where we will, you'll basically every day in your email get a new work of art from a different country. So we're basically going to cycle through the continents. I've gotten through, I picked the artwork for, I think about 12 or 15 of the days, and I'm excited about them. So I've started writing it. So you can sign up for that there, and then you'll just get a welcome email, and basically you'll get the content won't start until July. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will be here every week on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I don't know the topic for next week. I meant to pick it, but I forgot. So I think I might put a poll out because I have a few ideas, but I'm not sure what people are most interested in. So I had someone suggest coloring books, and I had a thought of, art teacher blogging, like if you're interested in how to do a blog. That was another idea I had. So anyway, if you have any ideas for sessions and any thoughts or any topic ideas, feel free to send them my way. Okay, I am signing off. I got to find out if the girl won the t-ball game. Probably not. They were playing a really hard team today. So anyway, thank you so much for coming, and I will talk to you guys next week, Tuesday at 8 o'clock Central Time. Have a good night.